أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلوات وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with the ability to discern and understand things on many levels, and each one of us as human beings have been given somehow a level of talent in discerning and understanding and comprehending. And that's why the Almighty speaks to people on different levels. And that's why we as human beings, we endure responsibilities and duties also based on a minimal level of what we need to be practicing. And all of this is to cater to the natural process of how we develop as human beings. And this is why the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has said, "Inna ma'ashirul anbiya umirna an nukallima an-nasa ala uqulihim. Umirna an nukallima an-nasa ala qadri uqulihim." That's another hadith, which means that we are from the lineage, the Holy Prophet says, we are from the lineage of prophets, and we have been given the order to speak to people based on, according to their intellectual capacity, according to the level of their intellectual comprehension. And that's why you can see that one, for example, ayah or one verse or even one simple practice can be understood in multiple levels and from different perspectives. How would we, for example, comprehend the importance of something like, for example, salah, prayer, and all of the different grades and levels of how to improve one's prayer? So much so that Imam Khomeini rahimahullah wrote 3 very, very intrinsic kind of detailed books on the etiquette of salah. And of course, this is, you know, among the many examples we are able to give that we as human beings have a greater capacity, a greater ability, more than what we know. I'm sure you've heard the famous hadith that says, "Atahsabu annaka jurmun saghir wa fika intawa al-alam al-akbaru." Do you assume that you are a minuscule, a minor atom, and within you the whole cosmos has been entailed? The whole universe exists right there within you. And so these are just among the things that really bring about a significance in the Islamic attitude towards thinking, towards knowledge, towards understanding, and how many problems Islam will solve by doing this. I'm trying my best to make this PowerPoint presentation as user-friendly as possible, as straightforward and direct as possible. But if you have some criticisms, which is of course expected, as far as the quality of my presentation, I am very, very sorry. We didn't have any of these requirements in Hausa, and therefore please try to overlook the shortcomings as far as the presentation, but I'm trying to do my best. A reminder again that we are on a level that is elementary, that is for beginners, that is basic. And therefore, I don't want to overburden my brothers and sisters in mentioning offshoot theories or things like that that could, not only confuse you, but also make you lose interest. So the gist of all of this is how Islam presents all of these different methods in not only the correct process of thinking, but also how we can justify ideas and thought, how we can rely, on a good level of knowledge, and how we are able to distinguish between true factual knowledge and false, incorrect knowledge. And of course, most importantly, for us to be able to convey all of this to others as well. So, when someone comes about in saying something that you think is, as we had mentioned, nullifying the role of intellect in a human being, or what we refer to as ta'tilul aql, then you can straight away say, hey, by the way, that kind of idea that you have is false in because of 1, 2, 3, 4. Or if someone says, all paths lead to Rome, and it doesn't matter if you are in a mosque or in a synagogue or in a church, you're all worshiping the one God, and we shouldn't have any kind of favoritism in religion, and we shouldn't say that this religion is better than that religion, because our goal is one, and we all need to respect each other, and we don't really know whether or not we have the absolute truth, and therefore we just deal with the knowledge that we have. See, a lot of these things that religious pluralists say sound very catchy, sound very nice. Let's live with each other, let's not kill each other, let's validate the view of someone outside of our religion. But the conclusion is extremely dangerous, isn't it? By saying that, well, yeah, I have to respect your religion, not because it's my religion that says so, it's because I don't really know if the information I have is absolutely correct, because there are so many counter arguments against it. And therefore, I can't with 100% confidence say that I am following with absolute certainty the absolute haqq religion. And of course, that would mean that, the next best thing is relativism. So everything is nisbi, everything is relative, and there is no absolute mutlaq haqq. So again, this is another example in the philosophy of religion that it depends on the epistemic value of knowledge. And this is why, we, if you remember in our first session, when I explained agnosticism, and a lot of people, it's kind of like a trend for someone to be atheist or someone to be agnostic, and it's a lot less of a trend for someone to be religious, or someone to be religious but secular religious, that they are willing to compromise and they are willing to let go of a few things, especially in Sharia law, and things to do with the penal code and issues like that. And all of this is based very much on epistemology. And, you know, an agnostic, where does that stem from? Where does that originate from? It originates from this level of shak and skepticism in regards to how a person is able to evaluate the level of knowledge that they have and how much they can rely on it. And that's why, you know, when we look at these different levels of knowledge or these different sources of knowledge, whether it be hawas or tajruba or aql or qalb or wahi, I've put all of these here. How can we evaluate each and every one of them, right? So we are up to the topic of, we are up to the level of number 1. So today I'm going to be talking about sensual perception or sensory perception or knowledge through senses. And also experience as well, but not to that extent. And then we will, in our next session, we will talk about aql, and in the last episode about qalb and wahi. Of course, when it comes to these things, you know, we will, inshallah, explain them one by one. Skepticism. We've spoken about skepticism, and therefore we, in the last lesson, we gave the examples of how a skeptic thinks in either completely rejecting reality or the external world, or not rejecting the external world, but saying that it can't be relied on, and especially due to the fact that we make mistakes in our sense and in our senses. I just wanted to say that with skepticism, if you write it with a K or if you write it with a C, doesn't mean that one is wrong and the other is right. It seems that in America they prefer the K more than the C, or have I said that the opposite way? Yeah, so
in America, that's right, sure. They prefer the K. Right? They still, I think they're still learning the English language over there.
Yeah, so they prefer it with a K and not a C. So yeah, so we had to say that just in case. So all the way from Georgius and all the way down, we've seen, you know, cases of skepticism. And by the way, within the Islamic tradition, if we were to ask who are the protagonists or who really, you know, pushes the theories of skepticism, Ash'aris. The Ash'a'ira are the most commonly known theologians who had within their theories, embedded within their theories, skepticism. And this is why Abu Hamid al-Ghazali is very much influenced in that level. And there's a lot of shakkakiyya and skepticism in Abu Hamid al-Ghazali as well. You know, even though there have been writings on al-Ghazali as far as skepticism and his views are concerned, but unfortunately, because of how the environment was at that time, this is what he was inflicted with. And this is exactly why we can see that Fakhruddin al-Razi was the master skeptic, that's why they call him Ash-Shakkak, Fakhruddin al-Razi, or they refer to him as Imam al-Mushakkikin, Imam al-Mushakkikin, the Imam of skeptics, al-Razi. And I'm going to be mentioning something from Khaja Nasiruddin al-Tusi, who wrote many refutations on al-Razi. Even with al-Ghazali himself, when he wrote the Tahafut al-Falasifa, that was very much based on mixing between disciplines and using this terminology as an explanation for that ilm, and that terminology as an explanation for this ilm. Remember when we said, when it comes to making sure that we use the right terminology for each ilm, it's very important. It's extremely important. This whole, kind of very scary controversy about the word wahda in Irfan, or wahdatul wujud in Irfan. I had no plan whatsoever to say it, but because it's really, a big issue in our community where, so many people are hostile towards wahdatul wujud, and it is the greatest form of kufr and things like that. But reality is that is wahda, the word wahda here, and also the word wujud in Irfan, defined exactly the same as in philosophy, or exactly the same as in theology, or exactly the same as in fiqh? The answer is absolutely not. Even with the word wujud, what does wujud mean, brothers and sisters? Even with that simple word, wujud, there are so many conflicting views and definitions. Definitions as well. Does wujud have asala, or does it have i'tibar, or is it i'tibar? Are there different levels? Is the wujud that we attribute to God on the same level of wujud that we attribute to the human being, but on a different grade, on a different level of intensity, and all these other things? So my point here is we really need to be careful entering into a deeper level of understanding the knowledge of knowledge, which is epistemology. We need to be very careful that when with the formulating of an argument, or with looking at an argument, we are able to pick up on these things. That's extremely important. Anyway, skepticism, it is a very, very dangerous world, in the sense that it's a lot to do with confusion, and also a lot to do with paranoia, because skepticism, if it is not cured, and here we're talking about epistemic skepticism or philosophical skepticism, if it is not dealt with, or if answers are not given, then it will become so radical and so extreme that it overtakes someone. And that's why, one of our philosophers, who says, even Ibn Sina says this in Al-Isharat, who says that if someone comes up with a doubt as to whether external existence exists or not, or if someone was to doubt whether they know or not know, or someone was to doubt whether they are the figment of the imagination of a sleeping alien giant in another planet, and they're just waiting to wake up, or if they're in the Matrix, then you give them an argument to prove against that, or you explain to them how reality is real. And if they don't, then you give them another explanation. And if they don't, then as the Arabic proverb says, آخر الدواء الكيء ولا يفيده إلا الكيء. Excuse me. That the last solution, the last cure, is to burn them. Kate means to like cauterize, I think the word is, that you kind of like heat up an iron and you put it on them and burn their hands, for example. And then when they say, ouch, you say, well, it doesn't really exist. So why are you saying ouch? You know, there's no reality to existence. Why are you saying ouch? Have you seen the trailer? No, I haven't, but apparently there's something new coming out. How did you know that I'm into this stuff, brother?
I think it was before the start of last week's lesson. We were discussing various things, and then you just mentioned the Matrix now as well, so that kind of jolted my memory a little.
Well, cauterize. Yeah, brother Shuja. Cauterize, yeah. So, Kate, let's get back to our lesson. Kate, when you say ouch, you are the other person's going to say, okay, well, you know, why are you saying ouch if there is no reality to it? So that's why it's a great issue. It's a big problem if someone somehow, you know, says, well, you know, either nothing exists, or if it does, then we are incapable of perceiving it in its complete form, and all these other things that are said. And, you know, even with this flat world theory, and that you would be surprised that there are many people I should not say many people, but there are people out there, intelligent people, smart people, seemingly, that genuinely believe that the earth is flat. And the way they prove that is by putting a golf ball onto the surface of the earth in their front yard, for example, and it not going anywhere. And they would say, well, if it was the case, you know, that the world was flat, then wasn't flat, then the ball should be going down this way or down that way. And so, because we've made so many mistakes in our knowledge that we perceive through our senses, then how are we so confident to believe really that the earth isn't flat or is flat? We don't know. And so therefore, you know, even though when it does come to senses, our senses is a door. Excuse me, sorry about that. It's spring now, so usually it's my allergy time. Very sorry, brothers and sisters. Our senses is the door that we have access to in order for us to receive knowledge. And this is why, with the absence of one sense, there's going to be thank you. The absence of one sense, you're going to be losing a whole category of knowledge. And therefore, it's very important for us when we look at our sensory knowledge or what we perceive by our ilm, there's going to be that kind of yeah. That's right, brother Shuja and brother Bilal. It's very sad. It's weird as well. And by the way, these same people are anti-vax as well. So that kind of like gives a sign. So we can't deny the fact that, I was going to say flat. We can't deny the fact that the knowledge that we have initiates from our sensual perception. You know, the Quran says that Allah أخرجكم من بطون أمهاتكم لا تعلمون شيئا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought you out from the wombs of your mothers, not knowing anything. What do we mean by not knowing? Do we mean not knowing as in absolutely no knowledge whatsoever? No, the fitrah is still there. The fitrah is still there. The fitrah will always be there, but it's more of a development in many levels, right? And of course, there are million type of skepticism out there. I think what is really important for us is philosophical skepticism, moral skepticism for especially when it comes to Western society, religious skepticism when it comes to people of religion, and of course metaphysical skepticism when it comes to something like proving the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, with scientific skepticism, it's not really much of a problem because, you know, you need to, at times, you need to have that level of, you know, shak and doubt to perfect your work, as long as it's a reasonable level, right? As long as it's something bil hadd al ma'qul. Right, brother Bilal, do you want to say something? You raised your hand.
Yes, just when you mentioned scientific skepticism, before that, the question that popped into my head was, in regards to other areas of life, is there such a thing as a healthy dose of skepticism to kind of ensure that we have a base to form our inquiries? And otherwise, if there's zero skepticism, isn't that where you get people just following blindly and this kind of cultish phenomena? If we just take everything at face value, and if there's a balance between being absolutely skeptic and having zero skepticism, then it kind of leads to inquiry, reflection, and it gives you a greater conviction when you do arrive at a state of belief about something.
Yeah, so if we look at it in the way that we've discussed, in the sense that we don't want to take the Cartian way of Rene Descartes and say that our initial point of embarkment when it comes to knowledge is doubting it and then concluding with certainty. That is going to be critically dangerous for us, because we're always going to try to look for to justify and not take things in how it should be, especially when we are receiving it from a legitimate source, especially when we are receiving it from, for example, revolution. You know, you come across a fatwa, for example. One person would take it as it is in the correct way. Another person would say, yeah, but who says that that's what he meant? So in most cases, I would say in most cases, shak is going to be problematic. Jahl is never going to be problematic, especially if it's jahl basit, if it's simple ignorance. Yani you know and you don't, sorry, you don't know and you know that you don't know. Or in some cases, hesitation could be good, but being skeptical or saying, this would weigh a grain of salt, or this wouldn't, mount up to an argument. Evaluating each and every scenario in the correct way, in the best way, is very important. But for example, shak in salah, it's very bad. Shak in tahara and najasa is extremely bad. You lock the front door of your house, and then 3 minutes later, you say, did I lock the door or did I not lock the door? Did I remove the iron from electricity? Did I turn off the stove? Now, all right, so that kind of like thought came into your idea. Someone who doesn't control that in a reasonable way will end up, I know people like this, unfortunately, coming and going to their house, out of the car, back into to the kitchen, to the stove, 5, 6, 7 times before they leave the house, because they keep on doubting whether or not the stove is on. Or may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep all of you away from this intrusive thoughts about, the most simple, the most basic of things. So that's also going to be very, very dangerous. And that's why we said that, for some people, burning them on their hand, and making them wake up to reality is going to be the only solution. And in today's society, thank you, Brother Shuja, that's an important point. And today's society, when we, see how psychiatrists deal with OCD, they give them medication, and OCD is shak. OCD and waswasa and becoming scrupulous is a form of shak as well. And that's a very important point, Brother Shuja. Thank you so much for that. It's a matter of a methodology that, if it is within the methodology that should be used as far as weighing the argument and looking at counter arguments and dealing with those arguments, then that wouldn't be classified as in that level of shak. Let's have a look at, I've got 4 clips, so let's go through them, please.
My name is Jennifer Nagel. I teach philosophy at the University of Toronto, and today I want to talk to you about the problem of skepticism. What do you know for sure? Consider the fact that you are watching a video on your computer right now. Is this something you know? Before you say yes, consider the following question. Do you think it is possible for someone to dream that they're watching a video online, when in fact they're asleep in bed with their computer turned off? Can you prove that you are now awake and not dreaming? If not, do you know that you are watching a real video as opposed to dreaming one up? If you start feeling inclined to doubt that you have knowledge, you're feeling the attraction of skepticism. Our word skepticism comes from ancient Greece, the home of not one but 2 great skeptical traditions, academic skepticism and Pyrrhonian skepticism. Academic skeptics argued that sensory impressions, which are often taken to be the foundation of knowledge about the world, don't actually enable you to know anything. Do you have the impression that the voice you are hearing now is the voice of the same person who narrated the first video in this series? I might have an identical twin. You might be misremembering, dreaming, or in some other way making a mistake. Because impressions can be misleading, you can't know that the same person is narrating both videos. The academics used arguments like that one to support their general conclusion that knowledge of the world is impossible for humans. Pyrrhonian skeptics went one step further. Their mission was just to keep on inquiring and doubting everything without reaching any conclusions at all. Where the academic skeptics argued that knowledge was impossible, the Pyrrhonian skeptics worked to suspend judgment even on that point, keeping all questions open. Some skeptical arguments have been known since antiquity and used in both Eastern and Western philosophy, most famously, the dreaming argument. If what you are now experiencing is just a dream, then it's not clear that you know anything about your immediate environment or even about yourself. The ancient Chinese philosopher Zhuangzi reported having dreamed that he was
So we took this in the previous
and
class, didn't we?
later that he did not know whether he was then a man dreaming he was a butterfly, or whether he might now be a butterfly dreaming he was a man. You might think that there are some facts you could know whether or not you are dreaming. 17th century philosopher René Descartes suggested that even if you are dreaming, you should still be able to know that a square has 4 sides, or that 2 + 3 = 5. But Descartes found a way to raise skepticism about those facts too. He noted that it feels natural to us to make those simple mathematical judgments, but pointed out that we could ask whether what feels natural to us really has to be true. Where does our nature come from anyway? Descartes also developed a powerful skeptical scenario designed to make you doubt absolutely everything, including your grasp of abstract facts. Imagine that there is an evil genius of utmost power and cunning devoted to deceiving you. The evil genius controls all your sensory impressions and all your instincts about math and geometry and so on, making false things seem true to you. The challenge of skepticism, Descartes argues, is the challenge of proving that you are not right now in the hands of such a demon. In the next video, we'll look at Descartes' own way of answering that challenge. Meanwhile, various other powerful skeptical arguments have emerged since Descartes' time. The 18th century philosopher David Hume had some especially good ones, covered in detail.
So someone was saying, why is David Hume wearing a imama, wearing a turban? Is he like, no, it's not a turban. It's just a weird looking hat.
In 2 separate Wi-Fi videos. Moving to the present day, we have a new version of Descartes' evil genius argument. Imagine a brain kept alive in a vat and connected to a supercomputer that delivers sensory signals that simulate the experience of a coherent reality. The computer also picks up the brain's outgoing motor signals and adjusts its inputs accordingly. When the brain sends out motor signals to raise a hand and touch something, the computer delivers coordinated visual and tactile input of seeing the hand and feeling what it touches. If the computer program is good enough, and let's assume that it is, the brain in a vat experiences a perfectly realistic virtual world. He could have experiences of going to the beach on a sunny day, meeting a brain, watching a video bad case you can't prove that 5 minutes ago. If it did, it would look just the way it does now. But many of your beliefs...
See, like, I don't understand, like, don't these people have anything else to do than to come up with these kind of brain in the vat arguments and things like that? It's so weird. Like, something as straightforward, as simple as...
published in 1640. The Cartesian way comes to us from René Descartes' Meditations, published in 1641. You'll recall from the last video that Descartes dramatizes the skeptical problem with a scenario involving you and an evil genius who is determined to send you all kinds of misleading impressions. After stirring up maximal doubt, Descartes asks whether there is anything you can know for sure. What about your own existence? Hey, it looks like the evil genius couldn't possibly deceive you about that. For him to deceive you about anything, you have to exist. As long as you're thinking about anything, you can know for sure that you exist as a thinking being. It's not easy to leverage this one item of knowledge into a larger solution to the skeptical problem. But Descartes notices there's one more thing he has at his disposal as a thinking being. Whether or not he's being deceived, he's aware of a great diversity of ideas within his mind. Although at this point, he's not yet sure whether these ideas represent anything real. He observes that some of his ideas represent greater and lesser things. And his greatest idea of all is his idea of an infinite and perfect being. That's an amazing idea. In fact, it's so amazing, Descartes thinks, that it couldn't come from an imperfect being. The only possible source for such a great idea is an infinite and perfect God. So God, therefore, exists. Now, if the universe is run by a good and all-powerful God, Descartes argues, we can't be trapped in an endless dream of unreality or left in the clutches of an evil demon who deceives us all the time. When we think carefully, Descartes maintains, we'll see that the skeptic's global bad case is not really possible. An evil demon can't possibly exist in a world with God, and we can prove this. God clearly plays a very important role in the Cartesian response to skepticism. And from the start, critics have raised worries about Descartes' way of trying to prove the existence of God. In particular, it's not obvious that he's on safe ground as he reasons about the sources of his ideas, if he's still at that point supposed to be taking very seriously the idea that there could be an evil genius distorting what seems true to him. But whether or not you like the Cartesian strategy, you might wonder whether meaningful responses to skepticism have to take the very ambitious step of trying to show that the skeptic's bad case is flat out impossible. A different strategy would be to allow that the bad case is possible, but then argue that we still have very good reasons to think it isn't actually real. This is Bertrand Russell's strategy. Unlike Descartes, Russell thinks you can never have an airtight logical proof that anything is real beyond yourself and your experiences. And in particular, it's logically possible that your entire life is a dream. However, Russell argues, we have no good reason to accept the hypothesis that we're dreaming, and two good reasons, at least two good reasons, to accept the common sense hypothesis that our experiences come from ordinary physical objects. First, the common sense view is simpler, Russell says. It's the best explanation of the regular patterns in our experience. Second, common sense is our starting point. The existence of the outer world is one of the instinctive beliefs on which all knowledge is ultimately based. According to Russell, we're only entitled to reject an instinctive belief when we discover it's inconsistent with other instinctive beliefs. But our belief in the outer world isn't like that. If we believe in a real outer world, we can come up with a perfectly consistent scientific story about how perceptual experience generally works. The outer world is the simplest on the ways in which the outer world provides a good explanation of your external objects. Your hands are there in front of you. Moore says you should fight back by accusing him of being ridiculous, and you should brush off his demands for proof. Sometimes you can know things, like the fact that you have hands, without being able to prove them. Similarly, you can just know that you aren't dreaming right now, even if you can't prove it. Something odd about Moore is that he says you can prove that the external world is real, while also saying you can't generally prove that your hands are real. But no ordinary things.
So even more kind of like tracks back on his own argument that your hand do exist or not.
In front of you right now is, and not a if. Moore thinks your common sense knowledge would only be in trouble if you were actually.
Yeah, so this is a very long one, but it's very interesting. I'm not gonna.
How do I know that 1 + 1 equals 2? Well, okay, I can probably give a justification for that.
I'm not going to show that, but this one is, there's this one.
Years ago, I was traveling on a crowded subway train. Nothing happened, no indication. When suddenly I call it is the only reality.
So this is going to be our next topic, of course, solipsism. But anyway, I try to like cut up the lesson in sharing information that would be useful. So John Locke, we have mentioned him, and he is an empiricist, which means he relies very much on empirical knowledge, or al-ilm al-tajribi. And of course, as he says, similar to what Descartes had said about these ideas, but Descartes says that we can go beyond ideas. John Locke says, no, we can't go anywhere beyond ideas, and that's the only thing that we receive. You see, you know, how Western philosophy in general, how Western philosophy is based very much on skepticism. And even with those who are not skepticists, rationalists or foundationists, somehow they still have those traces as well. Unfortunately, another unfortunate reality is that someone who doesn't have good ground in listening to the counter arguments or looking at what other alternatives have been mentioned, these issues are presented, are packaged in a very academic way and extremely enticing as well. And that's why most people who end up, you know, graduating from university in various courses end up subconsciously believing in skepticism as well, because it's very catchy. These arguments, they're very enticing. They sound very scientific. And, you know, what's the end result? The end result is people, you know, becoming either atheists or agnostic, because, you know, for years on end, they've just been fed one narrative. They're not given the alternatives to all of this. And that's why I genuinely believe, my brothers and sisters, that it's our duty to somehow, you know, tackle these issues and share this information with others as well, and talk to people about the reality of existence and how, you know, if I could say, dumb a lot of these theories are that have become the foundation for Western philosophy, even in contemporary Western philosophy. Like David Hume is highly revered, not that his theories are not criticized, right? Or Bertrand Russell, you know, he's the we could say the father of modern day philosophers. And so because they, you know, had, you know, access and they became mainstream, you know, they became, of course, very influential as well. So shak became the trend, shak became the norm, and yaqeen became the not so norm. What's the end result for all of this? What we see in today's society, where with moral relativism, religious pluralism, and all these other things that come about from that. But anyway, I just wanted to share just a little bit about John Locke. He isn't. He does have levels of skepticism, but he is not that skeptic. So he's not as good as Descartes in that sense, but he doesn't believe in the primary role of al-aql, of the intellect. And of course, then, the greatest musiba is David Hume, and him saying things along the lines of, we have to doubt everything, and, our knowledge, our ilm is only exclusively limited to our hawas, our senses. And as we know, our senses make a lot of mistakes, and therefore we can't really rely on the veracity of sensual knowledge or sensual perception. Then he has some arguments in regards to nature and the divine. And of course, he says that the topic of aliyah or causality, has many flaws in it. What's the overall outcome? That you will never be able to have absolute haqq. You'll never be able to know with certainty what it is. We've taken these ones, haven't we? Then we've got a big problem, and that is with a radical skeptic, someone who doubts even their own existence, someone who doubts even their own existence. And this is also referred to as solipsism. So a radical skeptic who doubts even his own existence, and they, have these ongoing intrusive thoughts about, of course, this is kind of like a mental instability, isn't it? It's something to do with the psychological status of a person, and that's why we have some people, who commit a crime, and then, they say, oh, I had voices, I was hearing voices that were telling me to do this, and clearly, skepticism is a sickness, it's a marad. If it reaches this level. So based on that brain in the vat argument, or based on, the dream in the dream argument, someone being in a simulation. So this is what the skeptic would say. I don't know if I'm in a simulation or not, if I'm simulated or not. I don't know if I'm in a dream or not. If I don't know whether I'm simulated or not, then I don't know really if I genuinely do have two hands. That's Moore was arguing against that, right? So what's the counter argument? I got this from the source down there. Well, I have two hands. I know that I have two hands. If I don't know that I'm not simulated, then I don't know. And then that I have two hands. And then, of course, the conclusion is going to be that I know that I am not simulated. Now, you're saying to me, come on, Sheikh, like, aren't these arguments so straightforward and so obvious? No, they're not. In today's society and how it's been dealt with in philosophy and epistemology, unfortunately, this is the reality. And I'm sure, you know, with your knowledge on David Hume and things like that, you'll see how influential these people are, and today's modern day atheists as well. So knowledge by our hawas is indeed very valuable, and it's something that we rely on. We need our senses in order to acquire knowledge, but no one has said that they are the first and last sources of knowledge. No one has said that they are infallible and don't make mistakes. So this whole argument is baseless by saying, oh, well, because our senses make mistakes, therefore we can't rely on them. But who said that senses didn't make mistakes from the beginning of creation? Who said that sensual knowledge, or what you perceive through your hawas, is the only kind of knowledge that exists? And even when you take it one step higher and say, well, it's only empirical knowledge, it's only by statistics, it's only by having solid evidence, material proof. If you can't put it under a microscope, then you can't accept whether it exists or not. Why? Who came up with this kind of exclusive idea that this is the one and only way and every other way is incorrect? That's not only far from reality, but it's being ingenuine. And when we look at ourselves and we look at creation and we look at our external world, you know, we can't not feel that we really are existing. And even if our senses did make mistakes, but they don't make mistakes all the time. Like, I know that what I'm seeing here is white and black, right? Yes, if you are colorblind, for example, or if you have difficulty with sight, you are impaired with a certain handicap, for example, okay. But in general, this is how it is. When I'm tasting asal, I'm tasting something sweet. If you have lost your sense of taste, and when you have some asal, when you have some honey, right? And it's, for example, you taste it sour. So that's not the problem of all human beings. That's not the problem of everything that you taste. It could be because you had something, for example, bitter, and then all of a sudden you're having something very, very sour, and then, you know, it's not going to be exactly the same thing. It's different, you know? So it's very much a matter of, you know, understanding, acknowledging our senses and errors that they make. And also what we receive from our senses is all knowledge that is acquired, and knowledge that is acquired. Al-ilmul husuli is also liable to error, and also tasawwurat are liable to error as well. In al-tasawwur, it is wrong. Why? Because there is no hukm. You are not judging between the subject and the predicate in the qadiyya. There is no tasdeeq, there's no assent. So in that level of tasawwur, there are going to be mistakes. Even when it comes to the level of tasdeeq, there might be error. And so an important point that Khaja Nasir ad-Din al-Tusi says in Naqd al-Muhassal. Al-Muhassal was a book written by al-Razi and Imam al-Mushakkikeen Fakhruddin al-Razi, and Naqd al-Muhassal is a refutation against that by al-Tusi. Of course, whenever we say al-Tusi, we must distinguish between Khaja Nasir ad-Din al-Tusi, the theologian, the philosopher, and Abu Ja'far, Shaykh al-Ta'ifa, al-Tusi, the muhaddith, the faqih, the author of al-Tahdhib and al-Istibsar. And as al-Tusi says, in the realm of tasawwurat, there is no haqq and batil or sahih or khata or right or wrong. There is none of that. That's only in al-tasdiqat. In al-tasawwurat, you are conceptualizing in your mind. You're bringing the information together in your mind. It's only in tasdiq that there is something like right and wrong, or haqq and batil, or true or false. In tasawwurat, it's only a ta'athur, it's only an infi'al, as they say. Then, of course, there is the level of al-hukm. Then there is the level of al-tasdiq, coming from the tasawwur. And that's why here al-Tusi says it is not the role of the hawas to bring together and formulate with along with al-hukm. Al-hukm here means judging the information. No, that's not the role of al-hawas, because that level of idrak is only an ala, it's only an instrumental tool, right? And they're not in any way going to be described as haqq or batil or this or that. That comes in the secondary stage, in the stage of al-hukm and al-tasdeeq. And this is why correspondence is very, very important. Al-mutabaqa, the theory of al-mutabaqa, the theory of correspondence, where this information that you have, does it come in correspondence, or is it correspondent to al-waqi', to reality? If yes, then it is true. If no, then it is false and wrong. So this sarab that we see, this mirage that we see in the deserts, right, is that correspondent to reality or non-correspondent to reality? It's non-correspondent to reality. What made me say that? In the level of tasdeeq, because the closer I got to that area in the desert, the more I realized that my eyes were playing games with me, that it was a reflection, that it was this, that it was that. And so that level of information that I received through my hawas in tasdeeq does not correspond to reality, and therefore what I had seen in through my senses in the mirage was not on the level of tasdeeq, and therefore it's not a matter of haqq or batil or sahih or khata. And of course this sorry, and of course this is going to give me the outcome, the result that there is a level of limitation that our sensual knowledge has. Okay, this is the among the conclusions that we have. You can just read them, and I think the last point that is very paradoxical is when you are doubting that statement that, okay, well, we need to doubt everything. That statement itself, is that yaqini or is that non-yaqini? So you are affirming doubt by removing certainty, but that affirming itself is certain. So it becomes very, very confusing, doesn't it? Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi tahirin. If anyone has anything to contribute or say or a question.
Not so much a question, Sheikh, just something that came to mind. I came across a while ago. It's just about how senses and how we perceive reality and how the various senses can influence one another. I remember somebody was talking about a study that was done on how language can influence senses. And I can't remember the country or the language, was somewhere in Southeast Asia. And in that particular language, they don't have any words to describe a certain distinct shade of blue. And so when they look at colors on the color spectrum, their eyes don't perceive that particular shade of blue that they don't have a word for.
Yeah.
And I just found that interesting. It just reminded me of that. I just thought I'd mention it.
Ahsant. That's very true. Well, language is also very instrumental when it comes to knowledge as well. So, yeah, Brother Shuja, what is Nasiruddin Tusi's view on how to reach certainty? Does he regard this as the main aim of knowledge? Well, yes, of course he does. And that's why yesterday I sent out that document analyzing and cross-analyzing between Al-Tusi and Al-Razi as far as knowledge and yaqeen and shak is concerned. So I don't know if anyone had the time to read that, but it is an interesting way of how, you know, a Shi'i scholar dealt with these issues. Of course, doubting, coming back to doubts, you know, some people say that, oh no, Nasiruddin al-Tusi, he was an Ismaili and he's not a Shi'i. Who says that he is a Shi'i, and who says that we could say that pretty much to most people, you know, that who said that they were this and who said that they were that. But I think Nasiruddin al-Tusi, you know, stands out when it comes to tackling the shak arguments of Al-Razi, especially in his commentary on Al-Isharat wal-Tanbihat of Ibn Sina. Alam al-Hilli was very instrumental as well in this area. And so that's why I said, you know, that in the Shi'i tradition of Islamic thought, Shia ulama have a lot to contribute in the area of epistemology. Yeah. So if no one has any questions or comments.
Check one. Sorry, one question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking one thing, like from like a practical day challenges or issues we face and where to stop as a thinker. So for example, I give an example of an issue. Let's say particularly when we had the peak of these suicide bombings, and an 18-year-old blows up. Now trying to solve this problem, that how God would be dealing with that person, or how now this problem is that we have to be thinking about it. It doesn't make sense that someone didn't get an opportunity to understand the truth or the other side. So logic says God would be dealing with the justice, and maybe looking at some verses where say that where God will make the decision among them about the things that they were arguing with each other. Or we say that this is the God's jurisdiction. We shouldn't need to go into this because this is beyond our comprehension. This is probably the marfa, the rav that either Imam would have or Masumin would have, but we don't have it because we can't go. So this is a red line. We stop it. We can't say this way or that way. We leave it to the God. So I'm just trying to understand what your view or how we should deal with that.
So there's always going to be cases of things that we don't know. But for us to tackle issues by saying this is beyond our knowledge, this is all going to depend on what it is that we are referring to. When we try to understand the reality of life, we must certainly have access to everything, or else it will be classified as ta'til al-aql, or the dismissing of the role of intellect. And that doesn't make sense at all. If we were to say that for the reality of life, we don't really know the reality of life and things like that, and only the ma'sumin do, that's also something that we can't very much accept. What level of knowledge we have needs to be utilized in such a way where we try to comprehend the reality of things around us. But yes, وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. The Quran says you've only been given a small portion of knowledge. So there's always going to be a struggle in trying to understand the greater purpose, or of a higher level. But matters like theological issues, no, we have complete access to gaining knowledge of these things. And we can't say, for example, that, oh, we don't really know why or how. Yes, we know the principles. I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is adil. And I know that nothing that he does will in any way, be against his level of adl. So if I am inflicted with a musibah, with a calamity, a member of a family dies, or I go through a financial hardship, or this or that, I don't know exactly why that happened. Did it happen because I sinned? Did it happen because God wants to test me? Did it happen because of setting an example? Did it happen for this? I don't know exactly. That's ilm. That ilm is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I do know the principle, and the principle is that God is just and he never does anything out of vanity. I think that's that level we have to kind of understand. We have to get to the bottom of certain things as far as principles are concerned. But it's all going to differ, isn't it, brother? In the realm of theology, it's going to be different to the realm of fiqh, for example. So there are certain expectations that we have as far as accessibility to knowledge in theology and philosophy, and less is going to be in the realm of fiqh, which is devotional. It's based on ta'abbud, isn't it? It's not debate. It's not based on the waqi', on the reality of matters, because we don't have access to that. For example, we don't have access to the reality of why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exclusively made pig and dog, ajallakumullah, najisul ayn. Why exactly? You might say, oh, there's this certain worm that the dog has, or it removes your ghira, or these are explanations. These are wise sayings, or hikam, as we can say. It's not the illah, it's not the real cause behind it. So in that sense, yes, we say, well, we don't know, and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that, because that realm itself is in the realm of ta'abbud. It's not in the realm of intellectualization.
Thank you, Sheikh Hassan. Indeed, that's the key point. I understand the realm and the field of knowledge. Thank you.
You're welcome, Ahlan Sahlan. Brother Shuja, do you think that there are any benefits to David Hume's skeptical inquiry? Absolutely no. He was hugely beneficial in a number of ways, such as in raising the problem of induction and identifying the is-ought fallacy. Well, the is-ought fallacy, if you read what I had written during the days of Muharram through Ayatollah Sheikh Misbah Yazdi, he mentions the is-ought argument in a very detailed way, and it's a really, really good argument. But again, very confusing, especially in the realm of akhlaq as well, or moral relativism. The attempts to solve these problems led Western philosophy towards many beneficial epistemological discussions. Yes, I would say that, yes, beneficial epistemological discussions, they're always going to be beneficial, but useful in that sense, or whether it's given us a way to solidify our understanding of reality. Unfortunately, those who are within that camp, no, unfortunately. So I would tend to kind of disagree on beneficial, if what you mean by beneficial in that it was useful on a practical level in us understanding reality and eliminating shak. I don't think David Hume in any way contributed to that. Salam, Sheikh. Yes, well, you know, in a level of akhlaq, it's very difficult to accept the is-ought argument, you know, because it's all based on distinguishing between what should happen and what is happening. Where can you mention, do you remember where it is that Al-Alama mentions that? That would be good, because I don't remember. I know, as I mentioned, Sheikh Misbah mentioning it in detail and refuting it. Good, that would be very good if you do, Brother Shuja. Thank you so much. Brother Muhammad, what fundamental principles are absolutely true and beyond all skepticism? Yaqiniyat, bedihiyat. They are absolute true, absolute certain, beyond any level of doubt. That's what we're going to be taking, I think in the next session. Anyone else? If not, then inshallah we will see you in our next episode, inshallah. Keep me in your dua. Thank you so much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.